Today we're going to be testing the difference between the Polygon Siskiu D5, D6 and D7 and get the perspective from a beginner rider, an intermediate and an advanced one as well. So first off, what is the Polygon Siskiu D range and what kind of riding is it good for?
So Siskiu D stands for down country, a fairly new category of bike, but essentially it blends the efficiency of a cross-country bike with the versatility of a trail bike. If that still sounds a little bit confusing, it's just a mountain bike for the everyman. From fire roads to single track and flow trails to more mild tech, the 120mm of travel front and rear, mixed with the balanced geometry of the Siskiu D, means it's up for everything except more gnarly descents and bigger drops and jumps.
So before we take them for a ride on the trail and get a good test in, let's check out the main differences between each of the bikes.
Let's start with the frames. So all bikes share the same great geometry and front triangle of the frames. Where the bikes differ a bit is in wheel size and the rear triangle. The D5 hosts a rear triangle with a boost spacing quick release rear axle and is available in sizes small, medium and large in 27.5 inch wheels. While the D6 and D7 beef things up a bit, with a boost through axle in the rear and the one-piece suspension linkage, which stiffen things up a little and reduce any unwanted flex when the trails get rougher. The D6 and D7 are available in small and medium in 27.5 inch wheels and 29 inch wheels in medium, large and extra large. The drivetrain is a main point of difference between all models. The D5 features a 2x9 Shimano drivetrain with an Alivio derailleur front and rear. This provides plenty of range for riders on pavement and fire roads, where the wider spread of gears is welcome on faster road descents and steeper gravel climbs. For those more single track focused, the 1x drivetrains on the D6 and D7 with one chainring up front and a wider range cassette on the rear might be the ticket. These low maintenance simple shifting drivetrains are definitely a welcome addition. With improved chain retention thanks to the added clutch on the rear derailleur and a narrow wide chainring, this setup makes drop chains a rare occurrence. While both drivetrains are Shimano Dior and shift quite similarly, the main difference is the range of the gears, with the D6 featuring 10 speeds and an 11 to 46 tooth rear cassette, and the D7 a whopping 11 to 51 tooth cassette with 11 speeds, making the climbs that little bit easier. Next up, we have the seat posts. The D5 features a classic rigid post, however does have the ability to internally run a dropper post if you see fit in the future. If you want a dropper post from factory, the D6 and D7 offer just that. What's a dropper post, you might ask? Simply, it allows you to easily drop your saddle on the fly instead of hopping off your bike and doing it manually. This is a must-have when attacking descents and riding trails with a lot of up and downs. The dropper posts on the size small and medium 27.5 inch bikes have 150mm of drop, and the medium to extra large on the 29 inch frames have 170mm of drop. Onto the suspension now, which is the main other point of difference between the bikes. All models feature an air shock in the rear, which allows you to adjust the air pressure to suit the rider's weight for optimal suspension performance. The main difference is the models, features and levels of adjustment for each fork and shock. On the entry-level D5, a key difference is the SR Suntour XCM coil-equipped front fork with a quick-release axle to match the rear of the bike. This fork features a preload adjustment and a lockout to help with efficiency on the road and more prolonged climbs. The rear shock is from SR Suntour 2 and features a lockout but no rebound adjustment. The D6 steps things up a little with air suspension front and rear, with the fork taken care of by Suntour again, but this time it's the XCR32 model, and the rear shock you get the X Fusion 02 Pro RL, but with both the shock offering a lockout as well as rebound adjustment too, allowing you to further customize your setup. Rebound adjustment is important as the trails get rougher and you start jumping more, as it makes the difference between the bike bucking you over the bars or keeping your rear tire firmly planted on the ground. The D7 takes another step up with a more refined RockShox setup, with again a slightly wider range of adjustment in terms of compression and rebound, but also providing more support and suppleness, providing a more playful poppy ride, while also providing increased levels of traction and grip. Another good thing to note is that all models come with durable, tubeless compatible double wall rims. The main difference being that the D5 and D6 come with 24mm internal width rims, best suited to 2.2 to 2.3 inch tyres, while the D7 comes with wider 29mm rims to suit wider 2.3 to 2.5 inch tyres. The D7 also features grippier Schwalbe knobby nick tyres too. Something that doesn't change between the models is the quality Shimano MT201 hydraulic disc brakes, with a larger 180mm rotor up front and 160mm in the rear, providing you with worry-free braking no matter your budget or the conditions. On to the last thing now, and that's the finishing kit. So the bars, the stem, and the grips. It's great to see that all models come standard with a super short 45mm stem. Wide bars are also standard too, with the D5 and D6 coming with 760mm wide bars with a 12mm rise and a set of Entity slip-on grips. The D7 steps it up again with an even more descending focus 780mm wide bars with 30mm rise and a nice set of Entity lock-on grips, providing you in a nice confident position to attack the trails. To round it all off, all bikes come with a comfortable Entity Void saddle.
So now we know the main differences between the bikes, let's take them out on the trail and have some fun. So now I'm back home and I've had some time to process my thoughts riding the bikes back to back to back. I've got some interesting conclusions. So before doing this test, I always thought the D6 was the best value in the lineup, and I've been riding it for a month now. So was that still the case? Well, it depends on who you are. So I thought the step up in suspension and drivetrain alone would be enough to convince me to go up to the D6 from the D5, but to be honest, all I really missed was the dropper post. So I think the D5 is a great value proposition, especially considering that you can easily add a dropper post in the future too. But if the simplicity of a 1x drivetrain sounds good to you, and you have a little bit of skill, you might be coming from a hardtail, or you just know that you're going to progress pretty quickly, I think the dropper post, also as well those through axles on the D6, is definitely going to be worth it for you. Now going on to the D7, there's just that next level of refinement over the D6, and you really notice that in the suspension. But it's also the small things as well, the riser bars, the lock-on grips, the grippier tires, they definitely don't go unnoticed as well. And you can't ignore that little bit of extra range on the gearing on steep climbs is definitely welcome too. So what's the verdict? Well, I think the Siskiu D series is a great option if you're looking to get into XC riding and a bit of trail riding too. Or if you're just looking for a great value bike for the money. And what I also noticed too on the climbs, I like talking about the descents, but you can't ignore the climbs. That steep seat angle really puts you in an efficient position on the bike. And the suspension doesn't bob too much either, and I rarely felt the need to use the lockout too. If you're asking me, as a more intermediate rider, I still think the D6 is the best value bike out of the bunch. But the D5 is still a great option for someone who's looking for a dual suspension for more hardtail money and just wants a little bit of extra comfort, and they know they're going to be sticking to a bit of gravel roads, fire roads, and also the road too, where that extra range in the gearing is definitely welcome. And the D7 I think is for someone who's got a little bit more experience that's really going to notice those benefits that you get out of the upgraded suspension. So those are my thoughts as an intermediate rider, so let's send it to Devan and Peter in the bike shed, where they're going to give you their thoughts as a beginner and advanced one too.
So let's start off with Peter. What bike?
I've ridden a little bit of each, but never all back to back. I mean, the D range offers a lot of capability, but the D5 was pretty impressive for the value. You get so much bike for what it costs. So a D5, if I was starting out or a young guy on a mountain bike, hadn't really come from something with dual suspension before, it'd be pretty amazing. The D6 was a really great bike, but I didn't see, I mean for me anyway, I didn't see a big jump up in performance between the 5 and the 6. When I went up to the 7, that's when things like the RockShox suspension really felt different, and I could tune it, adjust the rebound, do a little bit with the compression on the fork. The D7 was a big change in performance for me, and that'd be a bike you could ride kind of anywhere. You wouldn't need to upgrade any of the expensive things. What did you think of kind of the D7, all those features?
Being a beginner mountain biker, I wasn't able to properly utilize the D7 in the way it was supposed to be used. So when it comes to going off features, I tend to avoid the features. Any wheel leaving the ground, I try to avoid. But I did love the poppiness or the bounciness of the bike. It felt a lot different than the D5. in the grip, so the handlebars felt really nice.
Nice
And
grips,
those
yeah.
were the standout features for the D7 for me. What I preferred though is I think the D5. And the reason being is being a beginner mountain biker, not a beginner cyclist, but when it comes to my technical ability, and like I said, going off of trail features, I avoid that. So I don't really get to use the bike properly. And the D5 is more suited to my needs, being a beginner. And I felt like the value you get with the D5, you can use the additional funds to buy cycling kit. So I can get my helmet, I can get my jersey, I can get my shorts, shoes, and knee pads, right? So all the accessories I can get along with the dual suspension mountain bike. But I would go with the D5. What about yourself?
For me, getting the performance of kind of tunable suspension and a dropper post was kind of all I needed. If it didn't have forks where I could adjust and maybe tune to the trail, then I wasn't really that interested in it. So the D7 was my pick. It is the most expensive of the range. It's not expensive in the market. If I was going to save my pennies and maybe it was a bike for a friend of mine that was just getting into mountain biking, I'd go with the D5 first and then kind of let them take Devan's path, get all the gear, then step up to the 6 if they wanted a small difference, but then work your way up to a D7 is a great bike.
And I think the great thing about the D5 I found is it didn't come with a dropper seat post, but if I did want one, I can upgrade. You can put one in,
yeah.
right? And you do have the additional money to upgrade that bike. And yeah, so D7 for Peter, D5 for myself. And thanks for tuning in. Let us know what your favorite bike is in the description below. Are you gearing towards the D5, 6, or 7? All right, let us know in the comments, and we will see you next time.